Hello, this video is on exporting audio from MediaWorks and brought to you by Nelson Systems Incorporated. I'm using an Eventide Nextlog DX model recorder using software version 2023.5. You can export audio as a single file when working with one recording, or you can export multiple recordings in various fashions. You can work from either your Browse tab, Search tab, Instant Recall tab if you have permissions to export as an Instant Recall user or as another user using the Instant Recall tab. Simply highlight or select the recording you want to export, right-click on that, and choose Export Single Recording. And that's all that would be needed to export a single file from the recorder. When you click on that, it will prepare the file, and then depending on your browser, it may prompt you where you want to save that file to, or it may just save it to your downloads folder. From there, it'll be a WAV file, and you can then attach it to an email, put it on a thumb drive, burn it to a CD, DVD, however you want to distribute that file to the receiving party. If you have more than one file that you need to export, so I'm going to hold down Control and select multiple records, and then I'm going to right-click, and you can see now that the Export Single Recording option is grayed out because you have more than one record selected. So I'm going to click on Export, and it's going to open up the export wizard for me. The first thing it's going to ask me is how I want to export this media. All media in my record list, which in this case would be 414 records, or only my selected media in your record list. So in this case, we only want the 4 files that we've selected, so we're going to pick only selected media in your record list. It's going to let us know it's 4, and then we have a couple additional options. Create text listing. I don't believe you'll ever use that. It will include a .txt or text file with all the metadata for these recordings in that file. It's comma delimited, so you could use it to import into another system or to Excel. The option that you'll use if you want to send along information about the recording, such as the date, time, caller ID, DTMF, notes, annotations, address, whatever information that could be attached to that recording, you'll choose Create PDF Listing. From there, then you have some additional options. Displayed columns will only include the columns of information that you had showing in MediaWorks at the time of the export. So in our case, we would have source name, channel name, start time, duration, caller ID, and DTMF information in this PDF report. If I pick all columns, it's going to include all the information the Eventide recorder has in the database for those records. So it's going to include any notes, annotations, anything that a user might have added to that record. If you do not want to send all the information, let's say you do want to send caller ID, DTMF, and there's a couple other columns that you didn't have displayed at the time, but you don't want to send everything, then choose Custom Columns. Then click Setup Columns. Everything on the right-hand side in the Export Columns box will be added to that PDF report. So in this case, you can see we have note in there. If you have internal notes that you don't want to pass along with the recordings, make sure you remove that column from the report. So you would highlight that, use the left arrow, and remove it. Well, let's say you do want the calling party. We can highlight that, use the right arrow, and move it over. And then you can change the order of that information in the PDF. Once you have your export column set up the way you like, go ahead and click OK. Then we'll move on to the next page. Then it's going to ask you how you want those files divided. One thing that's going to play into account here for all of them, except for the one file for entire record mixed mode, any of the sequential ones at the top are going to go in the order you have your records sorted. So right now I kind of did this on purpose. My 4 records that I've selected are sorted descending in time, start time. So you can see the first record starts at 1554, next one 1549, 1545, and then 1540. So if I were to do this export now and use either sequential mode, it is going to export them in a sense backwards as they happen in real time. File number at the beginning will be actually the last recording that happened. So again, it's going to go in the order you have everything sorted. One file per record sequential mode. That is going to do one file, one WAV file for each of the records you are exporting. So in our case here, we have 4 records selected. I would have 4 WAV files at the end of the export. If I choose one file for the entire record list, it is going to give me one file with all 4 of those records in there, one after another. And they will be in the order I have them sorted. So the first recording in that file would actually be the last recording that happened in real time, and then the last recording in that single file would actually be the first recording. Kind of the same here with the one file per record. The one with the lowest file number would actually be the recording that happened last, because again, I have them sorted backwards in time. One file for the entire record list, mixed mode. That is going to take all those recordings, squash them together into a single file, and then export it. So in this case, we just have 4 different 911 calls, one that happened after another. But if we had a 911 call with radio traffic that happened at the same time, we'll look at that here in a moment, it would squash that all together, and then when played back, you would hear it as you were standing in dispatch at that time. You would hear the radio traffic play over the phone call. And skip inactive periods. It'll truncate out some of the silence for you when using the 2 mixed modes. It will mess up the timeline, so if you're counting along or trying to keep track of the time during playback, it can be altered when removing the silence. You can also apply boundaries. It's kind of like cropping a photo. If you want to get rid of anything of that export, you can. There's better ways to do that, so I don't think you'll be using the apply boundary. Our video on redaction or the split join media features to learn more about editing the audio before exporting. Alright, the next option, one file per resource mixed mode. That is going to do one file per channel that you're exporting from. This case, we're only exporting from a single channel, so there would be a single file. It would be similar to the one file for the entire record list. Most cases you may want a single file per recording. That way whoever you're sending them to knows that each one is a single file or a single recording per file. Click Next. It's going to ask you what you want to do with your time markers. Time markers, if you turn that on, will expand. And you can see it's more than just time markers. It's the talking time. So if you want a date and time stamp at the beginning of the recording, you can turn that on. It'll be either a male or a female voice. And then it will state the date and the time, the start time of that recording, and then it'll beep and play the recording. So for each file. Or you can use a beep if you don't want the date and time spoken. The volume allows you to increase or decrease the volume of the beep, and then you can also pan that. To the left would be out the left speaker, back in the center would play out left and right speakers, and then to the right would be just playing out the right speaker. Again, you can pick the female or male voice, and you can state the time in local time or UTC time, and then you have an options of where you want that date and time spoken. You can do it at the start of the file, at the end of the file, and also stamp it in intervals of however many seconds you specify throughout the file. And you can pick and choose which of those options you want to have turned on. Use timeline playback settings and apply redaction areas. If you have adjusted the timeline playback settings before exporting, you can enable that here. And also if you're in an incident and you've had added redaction points, you can enable those here. You can see our other videos on the timeline playback settings and redaction and learn more about that. And you also have the option to export audio annotations. So if you've added an audio annotation to any of the recordings, you can include that in the export. See our video on audio annotations to learn more about those. And then the file output encoding you can keep at mu-law. That is a good compression and good audio quality. Some customers may have an export to MP3 add-on license. That is a cost license, so there's a price associated with that. If you're interested in exporting to MP3, reach out to our office. You can reach sales at nelsonsystems.com. And then you do have raw and native encoding. MU-law should be fine for most instances. And then once you've configured your settings, go ahead and click Next. And now you want to give it a name for the file that you're going to create on the export. Export to file is going to create a zip file containing the WAV files for the audio you're exporting. You may have a single WAV file, you may have multiple. And it's going to include a text document if you've included that, PDF report if you've included that. And if you've included any audio annotations, it'll include those as well. Export to Auto Unpacker. That is a feature you can use with MediaWorks. It's another application that would install on your local PC that allows you to specify a location on your PC that you want the application to automatically extract the zip file for you. So in this case, we'd have a training.zip. It would open that up, copy the files out of it, and then put them into the location specified in the Auto Unpacker configuration. If you don't want to go to the default location specified in the configuration, you can then also choose a location to export. And again, you browse to where you want to on your PC. It would then unzip that training zip folder for you and place everything in that location. You can export to data, CD, DVD, Blu-ray. It's going to let you know what media that will fit on. If it'll fit on a CD, DVD, Blu-ray. If it won't, it'll give you a red X. And it shows you the approximate size of the export and the lowest media that it would fit on. So in this case, the CD holds 700 megabytes, and this will take up 3.36. And then you can email export. That will create the zip file for you, and then open up your default email application and open up a new email and attach that zip file to the email for you. And then you can go ahead and finish sending the email out to whoever you need to. All right, we'll do export to file, choose export. It's going to prepare that media for you, so it's making those WAV files, or MP3 if you chose that option. And then again, it's going to go to either your browser's download folder, or it's going to prompt you to where you want to save that to. So now we can open up our download folder, the training.zip file. And then we have our different records here that we've selected. So here you can see if we increase our column width, it gives the channel name, the date, and time that it started, what column you have it sorted by. So here we're sorting by start time descending. So again, our file with the lowest file number 2 is actually the recording that happened last at 1554, and our one that has an 8 at the beginning of the file number is the one that happened at 1540. The file numbers at the beginning are the location of the record in the list that you exported from, and it starts with 0. So in this case, it was the 3rd record, 5th record, 7th, and 9th that we exported. And then we have our PDF file. If we take a look at that, it'll include the metadata that we chose when doing our export. We'll see the file name, channel name, start time, calling party duration, caller ID, and then the other columns that we've selected. All right, so that is a standard export. We'll take a look at exporting records in the mix mode. So here we've selected a 911 call, and then we are going to pick some radio traffic that went with that. And then we are going to sort correctly for our start time. So right now we are sorting descending for our start time. So you can see the little blue arrow in the top right corner of the start time column is facing down. So if we left click on our start time column header, that arrow will face up, and now we are sorted ascending. So our recordings will happen as they did in real time, with the first one being at the top of the list. So now we can right click and choose our export, and we want only our selected media. We're going to go ahead and just skip the list now. And now if we go to our one file for the entire record list mix mode, what's going to happen is it's going to squish all this audio together. So as this 911 call is happening, when it gets to the point that the radio traffic occurred, that radio traffic will play with the audio from that 911 call. So again, it would have been like you were standing in dispatch at that time and hearing the radio traffic as you heard the dispatcher on that call. So again, that would be the one file for the entire record list mix mode. Single WAV file, and it'll all play back together. Best used to recreate chaos. That's all we have on exporting audio. To export audio along with screen capture, you could select your phone and your screen channels on the search tab with the date that you want, do a search, and then you'll have both of those in the same list for you. You can then select the recording that took place on the phone as well as the one that was on the screen at the same time. And if we go down to our timeline, we can see those kind of lining up down here. So we can select both of those, right click and choose export. And when we choose how we want to export those files, you would choose one file for the entire record list mixed mode. We'll click next. Then it's going to ask you how you want to encode your video. The MPEG ones may require additional codecs on the playback PC, so you can just choose one of the AVI. You can do the low compression, that'll give you better quality, or you can use the medium compression, that'll make a lower file size and still going to be good quality. We're just going to pick this one here. Go next, and then it's going to be the same options that you had for your export, and we'll give it a name and export. It'll take a little bit longer to process ones with screen recording. Once that finishes, you will see the download begin, or it will prompt you where you want to save that to. All right, now that it's finished downloading, we can go ahead and view that file. And we have our AVI file inside of our zip file. All right, so you can see we can see the screen recording and hear the audio both together. It does give you a text file, and that just gives the demographics about the two recordings, or the metadata. You can choose to include that if you like the 911 audio, or audio may have additional information in here that you don't want to send out, so please make sure you're reviewing this before passing it along. If you find you're doing an export the same way over and over, when you are in your export wizard and on the very last page, you set up your export presets. So you can save a default, so anytime you go to do an export, it will apply the settings you just used in this export to that defaults. Or you can set up different presets. So we'll just go ahead and just give this one a name of training. We'll click apply. Okay, we already had one named that, that's fine, we went ahead and overwrote that. And once you save a preset, we'll just go ahead and close out of this. Now when you right click on recordings, you can go to export using preset and choose the preset that you had there. So you could have a preset called single file, multiple files, mixed mode, maybe some of the different options you're going to choose when doing the export, so that way you get those additional steps. All right, that's all we have on exporting. Thank you for watching.